Today's interview is being done by William R. Corkum for the Veterans Voices program at Wright State University. I am interviewing Christopher A. Green. The date is 8/23/16. All right, Chris, we'll start this off by the simple way of saying thank you for doing the interview. Now, where and when were you born?
I was born in Superior, Wisconsin. Pretty much it's one of the most northern points of Wisconsin, but I only lived there for the first 9 months of my life. We moved to Green Bay shortly thereafter, and that's where I stayed for the approximately 10 to 11 years, and then we moved to Illinois.
Okay, who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My father's name is Floyd Green. My mom's name is Cheryl. My dad, he was a carbide tool salesman, so he worked with a specific company that was, I think, a distributor, and he went to the specific tool shops, said, "Hey, I got all these drill bits, buy some."
Like the Craftsman trucks and stuff like that.
Kinda. He was more. Kinda, I guess. I don't really know. I didn't really get all those specifics. I know he did a lot of cataloging with all these drill bits, and that he sold them. So I was always around tools when I was growing up. And no, I'm not really good with tools. I never didn't care. But I remember him always waking up early and coming home late and working late. And my mom, she worked with State Farm Insurance, I want to say, for a little bit, but she was mostly customer service her entire career.
That's cool. I've done a lot of customer service myself. I can understand. All right. Do you have any siblings, brothers, sisters?
I have a couple of half sisters, but I don't really consider them siblings. We're so far apart in age and in demeanor and personality that they're almost not family.
Ah, okay. And what were you doing before you joined the service?
I was working at a haunted house.
Really?
Yeah, I worked. There was actually a lot of fun. Prior to last year, I'd always try to go back for a couple of days to work there, dude. It's a lot of fun to scare the crap out of me.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
Unfortunately, due to the injuries I sustained just throughout my career, I can't do it anymore. It hurts too much.
Yeah.
So.
I hear you. I used to do a lot of Boy Scouting, and I don't do camping no more. All right. Which branch of the military did you serve in?
Air Force.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
A little column A, a little bit of column B. I'm kidding. My recruiter kind of shenagled me a little bit, kind of pulled the rug out from me and told me to go open general.
Oh, good Lord.
Because I wanted to go security forces, which that's my own fault. I wanted to, and he said, "Oh, the easiest way to do that is to go open general." Oh. All right, yeah. I almost had a heart attack. I think my 3rd or 4th week in when they started picking us for jobs. And they hand me this sheet, and there's no security forces on. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I didn't want any of these, and but eventually it all worked itself out, and I got what I wanted.
You've told me that story before, and it still makes me shake whenever you say it, man.
It's still really funny, isn't it, though?
Oh, yeah, it's still funny, and it still makes me quiver like, no. All right. Why did you choose the Air Force, out of curiosity?
Actually, I wanted to go Army. My dad was one my dad served. He was a veteran himself, served during the Vietnam War. And he said, before you go in the Army, let me take you to an Air Force recruiter and see how that goes. And they got, rest is history. He bamboozled me, whatever you want to call it.
Your dad's a Vietnam vet? Was he in the Air Force?
He was in the Air Force. He's a Vietnam era vet. He applied, and this is no fault of his own. He's kind of like you in how he was doing one job for like 4 different people. He was doing it by himself, and he requested to go to Vietnam 3 separate times, and they wouldn't send him because he was quote unquote too valuable to the mission at hand to lose.
Yeah.
So he was eventually transferred to Alaska. He was actually stationed here at Wright Pat at one point.
Alaska?
He wanted to go to Alaska. He
Really?
had a blast in Alaska. He was stationed in Elmendorf. I don't know how long. All I know is he did a lot of shenanigans up in Alaska.
I'll take your word for that.
Yeah,
I got a buddy who spent a lot of time in Alaska. He enjoyed it up there.
Yeah, he's done a lot of shenanigans.
It's too daggone cold and dark too long for me.
Oh man, that's all I want to do is get back up north.
All right, when you were getting ready to leave for boot camp, And how'd that go when?
Well, everything throughout my life, I've never done anything the easy way. I don't know any other way. The easy way for me is apparently the hard way for other people. I was originally scheduled to leave boot camp in August of 2005, but I had to get a wart removal done on one of my big toes because it just wouldn't go away. So they removed it. It was healing up just fine, and I was scheduled to go leave for boot camp when I injured my toe, re-injured my toe, and it didn't disqualify me, but it set me back a few months, and because it wasn't healed.
You had to wait until it healed up.
It had to wait till it healed up before I go to boot camp. So instead of August, I left in November of the same year.
And how were those first few days of boot camp?
Awful. Just absolutely awful. You can say what you will about Air Force boot camp being too easy or anything like that. All I know is that was some of the hardest mental shit I've ever gone through in my life. I was a 19-year-old kid. I'll admit my parents were a little overprotective of me when I was growing up. So I didn't get really get a lot of real world experience. So going down in Texas from Illinois, November 1 was hotter than hell. Yeah, it was not fun for me to begin with. So I'm already sweating, and I've never sweated like this before. I have this big old black, I want to say tech sergeant in my face, and this dude had to be at least 6'8" to me. He was massive. He was probably 6'3", 6'4".
Oh wow.
Massive, just yelling in my face, and it scared the crap out of me. And throughout pretty much the entire time of boot camp, I was miserable.
Well, my next question is to ask you if you remember any of your instructors. Obviously, you do.
I remember one for certain, and I can't remember this. And I remember two. I got washed back a week because I had a high ankle sprain, and so it sent me back a week. So I got sent back to a different flight. My first TI in the Air Force was Tech Sergeant Micklewright. He was a Texan medical doctor. Or medical, he was in the med field in the Air Force, so he was some bigwig, and so I don't know what exactly he did, but he was in the medical field, and he went to TI. I had another one, I can't remember his name, and then when I got washed back, I got put back into a guy who thought he was Gunny Hartley from Full Metal Jacket. His name was Staff Sergeant Phillips. I won't forget this guy's name because he was the meanest person I think I've ever encountered for a while. I've met some worse people, but it took a minute to fulfill his spot. And he claimed he was combat controller. He didn't like cops because he claimed they slept on post. At the time, I was so full of myself, like, security forces doesn't do that. We never sleep on post. Yeah, I was wrong to say the least. Anyway, he made my life hell because he found out I was going to security forces. And yeah, he was an awful guy. Every time we filed out of the dorms, he made us recite what makes the grass grow and all that other stuff, like Marine Corps stuff, dude. This dude was crazy.
Did you receive any specialized training?
What do you mean?
Cold weather training.
I'm from the north, of course I have cold weather training.
No, military version of cold weather training. Or anything like that.
I've gone through active shooter training before.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with OSP a couple of times.
OSP.
Ohio State Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
The Stadies.
Mm-hmm.
They actually run us through their shoot house in Dayton from time to time.
What was that like?
It's fun. You get to use sim rounds, which are kind of like pay rounds, but they're filled with colored detergent. Mm-hmm. But they hurt like hell when they hit you. If you're not wearing your body armor, they hit you in your arm or whatever, they sting. People get welts from them. It's funny as hell. But unless you're on the receiving end. But it's legitimately was really good training. I've gone through some riot training early in my career. That was fun because the flight chief 300 had just come out in theaters. And the flight chief, who was probably the most crotchety old man I've ever seen in my life.
Was he quoting lines?
He quoted the Sparta, Madness. This is Sparta thing. Mm-hmm. But we were at Manus Air Force Base, and he substituted Sparta for Manus. It was stupid. Looking back, it's stupid because of the base we were at, but they did get protesters from time to time. But they never showed up in the numbers they said they were going to show up in. So we're going through this riot training when only like 13 people show up. And you're like, oh, we're getting 130 people showing up today. And there's like 5.
Okay, so how do you feel you adapted to military life?
Not well. I've always been kind of odd to begin with, and I'm fortunate in the military. I seem to exacerbated that a bit. Upon my leaving the military, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and it makes a lot of sense throughout the entire career that it just kept getting progressively worse and worse. I didn't fully adapt to the military until I want to say around the midpoint of 2010. I had a huge problem with authority up to then. I was constantly in trouble. Now, granted, I'm going to take most of the responsibility for it because, yeah, I was a screw up by my own actions. Some of it wasn't. Some of the reactions from higher up wasn't warranted, I feel. But I will accept responsibility. I'm not trying to make excuses. I was a screw up.
How many years were you in?
I was in for 9.
Ah.
I was in for just over 9 years. And it wasn't until he's now Chief Master Sergeant, and I wish I could remember his last name. I feel really, really bad. I believe he's the SFM for Security Forces right now. Manager, Security Forces Manager, the guy, the head enlisted guy for the career field, pretty much. He just achieved that. At the time, he was a senior, and he got into me so hard that it pretty much forced me to pull my head from my ass. And since then, my entire attitude changed. So I thank him every time that something like that comes up, and I know what to do and what not to do. So.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all got somebody who sticks in our brains that way.
Yeah.
How'd you like living in the barracks?
Yeah. Dorm life in Lakenheath was fun. It was a lot of fun because this is back when we were allowed to party. We were allowed to have fun. And Lakenheath, at the time, I don't know if it still is or any anymore, England. I was stationed at RAF Lakenheath, England, from 2006 to 2008. And drinking age there is 18. And it's an English base. It's not American rules, it's English rules. So I'm a 19-year-old kid coming to England. Dorm life was great.
It was more like being in Animal House than being in the military, in that sense?
Yes and no. I mean, we still had to respond. Our Lakenheath was a nuke ready base. They had the capability of housing nuclear weapons. They had the bolts and everything. This is, I believe, open knowledge. So
it is now.
But they it was a really fun atmosphere. Now, granted, working there was a little different. We were in 12s the entire time, 12-hour shifts, the entire time. That's not a bad. It wasn't bad, except leadership every now and then was just really anal retentive. They're pretty much like everything does. They're making more of a threat out to be than there really was to begin with. At least that was my opinion of it. I could be completely wrong. I'm only human. It was just my perspective that they were more critical of things that shouldn't have been so important.
So, all right. So, since you were stationed on a base in England, and we've all heard interesting stories about British food. Well, how did you enjoy the food in the military?
I loved it. My dad's I'm third generation Irish American, third or fourth. I don't really remember how you count that, but my great grandfather came to America from Ireland in the 1800s. I know that much. So going there and experiencing the same type of food, experiencing the food that they had over there, it made me appreciate, hey, these guys are making do with what they got. And what they're making do with what it tastes great, at least in my opinion. Now, that was my opinion.
Hey.
And you can talk to...
The British like their food.
You can talk to a lot of people that are stationed in America that do not like it. They just don't don't appeal to them. But for some reason, that kind of food appeals to me.
I gotta ask this question. Did you ever eat haggis?
Yeah,
What do you think?
all right.
How was the social life over there?
I'm not a very social person to begin with. I had a couple of friends that I hung out with, but for the most part, I kept to myself.
Okay. Okay, so aside from England, where did you serve?
England, I was deployed to Manas, Kyrgyzstan. That's near Russia.
Mm-hmm.
I think I spent almost a year or a little more than a year total there. I was deployed there twice. Qatar once, which I'll never go back. No. It's like Florida on steroids in terms of humidity.
Oh,
Yeah. So I landed there in October of 2014, I think. I don't remember. But it was October 7th, and it was 106 degrees out with 100% humidity.
oh,
Yeah.
that's bad.
Yeah. It was October 4th, so it was on my birthday when we landed.
Oh,
Yeah.
happy birthday to you.
Yeah, happy
Here's your
birthday
wet
to me.
blanket.
Happy birthday to me. Here's 106 degrees and 100% humidity. We're going to sweat so bad your contacts are going to fall out of your eyes. And that happened. That legit happened.
So aside from the heat and the humidity, any other memories that come to mind?
Monochromatic brown. I mean, if I could sum my deployments in one thing, monochromatic brown. It was the same color everywhere, with the exception of Manas, because that actually had mountains to look at. Other than that, it was all the same color.
Oh, wow.
Brown. Just brown.
So did you never saw any actual combat?
No. 9 years. Not one. And I was scheduled to go to Afghanistan once, and I was in training for about 10 days, and they pulled the deployment from us while we were in training.
Oh, wow.
So we had to continue it. Yep.
You had to continue?
We continued 3 weeks worth. We continued the 3 weeks training, even though we had no mission.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting theory. So what were your duties?
As security forces, we joke that we're the infantry of the Air Force, and it's actually not really a joke. We act as MPs. I mean, that are some of our capabilities. At least at Wright-Patterson, your main mission is law enforcement, not security. So Wright-Pat has some of the most crazy amount of concurrent jurisdiction I've ever seen. Concurrent is when federal and state police work together. So you'd have state highway patrol, local PD, all them patrolling their streets. We'd be patrolling the same streets. Any pretty much the way it worked out, at least what I figured is, whenever we had a fence, whatever fence bordered on the road, we were allowed to patrol on.
Like 444?
Yeah. And Page Manor Plaza. That housing back there is military housing. We're allowed to patrol back there. Lakenheath was more security. It was actually a lot more security than patrol. I think we had maybe 1 or 2 police patrols total.
Well, you were outside of city limits, weren't you?
At Lakenheath?
Yeah.
We had your itty bitty base that was about the size of Kitty Hawk before they shut it down. Yeah, it was really itty bitty. But there was no cities really around us. We had villages.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, there was not much around us. It wasn't like Wright-Pat where you had this city right there.
Yeah, you're surrounded all the way around
Yeah.
the base.
So we didn't have, plus being overseas, we had SOFA agreements, but we weren't allowed to patrol off base in England. Here we were allowed to because of concurrent jurisdiction and all that. In addition to the law enforcement duties, though, we were security. With Operation Seaside that took place in Vietnam, that was pretty much the birth of security forces. A lot of bases were getting attacked prior to the formation of this, and when they came up with it, I don't want to say revolutionized. My memory's still a little fuzzy from the complete history. I don't want to make it out too much to what it is. But in the broad aspect, it came up with base security and having response times to sectorization and all that. Again, I'm painting broad strokes because my memory's fuzzy, but it pretty much made it easier to respond to base attacks.
Okay.
And that was our primary function. Now, with the current war on terror, our function changed a little bit. We became part of the Expeditionary Forces, and our training. I'm not, and again, I'm only coming up with what's in my memory. I can't back this one up fact. I believe parts of our training came from the Army Ranger Handbook, not the training, just the handbook. So I want to emphasize this. So I know guys that have embedded with the Marine Corps, who've embedded with the Army. Embedding with the Army is pretty much second nature for security forces. Because the Air Force came from the Army, we integrate really well.
A lot of similarities.
A lot of similarities. And one of the jokes was that security forces were too dumb for the Air Force, but too smart for the Army.
Okay. Yeah, well, I can understand how embedding would be easier with the Army for you guys. It's easier for us with the Navy.
But yeah, with the Air Force guys, I've seen Air Force, Air Force Ravens. They're flyaway security. So they'll be in a plane, and they'll land in a foreign country. They'll post out and protect that plane. That's ours. They're going to guard it. So we're capable of going anywhere, and pretty much being able to embed with pretty much anybody, from what I understand. I personally have never done it. It sounds like a blast, but I've never experienced it.
Do you remember any specific friendships or people you got really close to while you were in the Corps, the military? Sorry.
There's a couple of people, and I talk to them from time to time. But unfortunately, most of the friends I've made were every other military friend gone. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah. I've only got one that I still stay in touch with for the most, and two others that. When you were gone, how did you stay in touch with family?
In England, we phone cards. We had the phone. Mm-hmm. We used the phone card to call back home. Deployment, whenever you get a chance, really. I mean, they had internet. Mm-hmm. Spotty. When I was sorting out the Wi-Fi, if we had it to begin with. Now again, Air Force, cushy, I know. We had Wi-Fi at one point in the Green Beans in 2007, but it was so bad that it wasn't even really worth it. So again, you use phone cards. As technology progressed, it got easier and easier to keep in touch back home. Facebook. When I first joined, it was strictly to keep in touch with people. That was it.
That's a good use for Facebook.
So,
what did you do for recreation? I know you were on 12 and 12s when you were in England, right?
Yeah.
But what did you do for recreation when you were off duty?
Really? England, 19-year-old kid, off-duty time. Okay, I did a lot of partying. There was a lot of drinking in England involved.
Hey.
But I'm a video gamer. I'm a gamer through and through. So in England, I actually was able to meet an actual legit D&D group and do tabletop gaming for, I want to say, a year and a half while I was there. And then it just progressed from there. I mean, I typically, again, I keep to myself. I didn't really associate with people. I would hang out with maybe one or two friends, have beers or whatever, and play video games.
It's not that you were antisocial, it's that you were select.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes, selective.
How did you return home?
Carefully.
Huh?
Carefully.
What do you mean by careful?
I don't know what you mean by when I returned home.
Well, when you finally got out of the service.
Oh, that was last year in the end of January. I got medically retired. Due to a couple of back and knee issues.
Yeah, that's a constant in the military, leg issues of some sort or another. And did you go back home?
No, I stayed here. My parents moved back to Wisconsin towards the end of my career, and I actually had met my now wife while I was still in. So when I got out, I was already moved in with her, so we just stayed together.
Oh. Did you have problems adjusting to civilian life?
Man, I still have problems adjusting to civilian life.
There are times I do too. I understand. I mean, what do you think is the hardest part about readjusting to civilian life?
Comfortable in crowds for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't do crowds well. And trying not to look like you're in the military. I mean, I know it sounds like really vague and not a right word for what I'm trying to say, but it's really easy if you're paying attention to spot a vet out in the crowd.
Yeah.
It's really easy.
Yeah, the way we stand in the crowd, watching everybody.
Yeah, the way the sheer fact that we walk with a purpose.
Yeah. You don't see too many vets wandering around.
No.
And heck, even when we're wandering, we pay attention to where we're going.
It still looks like you're walking with a sense of purpose.
So I remember you mentioned you'd been able to stay in touch with a few of your friends from when you were in the military. Did you join up any of the veterans organizations?
Not really. I know it sounds odd, but I don't like people. I don't like I like talking to veterans, but when it's, I know it's gonna sound really awful, but it's when it's convenient to me.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll talk to people who are here in the vet center.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go out of my way to go talk to people when I'm home. I don't like going outside. I don't enjoy being out in public. It's not fun for me.
Mm-hmm. What, so you're going to school here.
Mm-hmm.
What, have you done anything else since you got out?
Not really. I took most of the last year off. I didn't really do anything. I tried to get a job. I got a job delivering pizza until I got bit by a dog. So that was the second day on the job. So I was like, this is not for me, and I took the rest of the year off.
Oh, wow.
I know that sounds selfish, probably not too healthy. It wasn't. It is what it is.
I've delivered pizza. If I got bit the second day, I would have quit too.
It is what it is.
And how do you think that your time in the service has affected your life?
I think it's affected for the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I matured a lot throughout my service, and especially towards the end when I became a staff sergeant. It helps me it helped me to calm down, number one, and actually take things into perspective and actually how to organize my time, which is a big problem for me sometimes is organization. Thanks to the habits I endeavored to instill in the military, I could still keep those up and still maintain focus.
I can understand that. My next question is supposed to be about what life lessons you learned from the military.
The life lessons I've learned from military are what not to do. I think I've learned more. I've committed more mistakes while in than I did positive things. However, I can honestly say I very rarely made the same mistake twice. I always found new and inventive ways to make new mistakes.
Okay. I'm sorry, that one caught me off guard. So you've got all that time in the military, which most veterans don't have that long in the military, much shorter times. How are your feelings about the military in general?
When I first joined up, I thought it was awesome. I got in a lot of trouble. I'm not gonna avoid that. But I felt like I was in the military between 2007 or 2005 till when I actually came to Wright Pat in 2008. There was a shift in mentality in leadership. I had a lot of old school style flight chiefs. You know, you don't get to talk to me as a young airman. You use your chain of command, and it was very, very disciplined. It was you talk to the senior airman, who talks to the staff sergeant, who talks to the tech sergeant, then maybe we'll talk to the flight chief. These days it was A1C is talking to the master sergeant.
A1C.
E2s, E2s, E3s.
Okay.
Talking to the flight chief, and it's odd. Now, granted.
Being a Marine, I don't know what a flight chief.
Sorry, the guy in charge of, I guess your squad.
Platoon leader?
It was for flight. It would be like 20 people. I don't know.
That's almost about a platoon.
Okay, it'd be the guy in charge of your platoon, I guess.
Okay.
I don't really know.
What's their rank?
Usually E7.
Okay, staff sergeant.
E8. E7. That's tech sergeant. Sorry. Wait. No, you're right. Yeah, E7's master sergeant.
Let's see. Sergeant.
E8 senior.
E9.
E7.
E7. I made a mistake. Gunnery sergeant.
Yep. So those are the guys in charge of the flight, but it shifted at one point. I can't quite place my finger on it. The mentality changed, and then it started becoming more of the millennial generation. I'm sorry to say it became more the millennial generation. Now, again, I'm not saying I'm sin-free of any of this bullcrap. I'm guilty of it just as much as everybody else. But it got to the point where you just couldn't. I couldn't take it anymore. But the me. When I joined in, this is gonna sound like crotchety old staff sergeant talking. When I joined, I didn't get the opportunities these kids got. When I first joined up and I went to my first base, they slapped me on a gate for 6 months. I didn't get to ride in a patrol car or a security vehicle for a long time. I had to work my way up to get to those positions. Nowadays, kids who are coming right in are being thrown right into patrol cars and told to patrol. Now, granted, they're not the leaders. They're not the leaders. They're alphas. They're not the ones in charge of the patrol car.
They've got somebody partnered.
They got someone partner with them who is usually a senior airman or higher. But it's still the case of these people are being put in these positions before. Now, granted, you can make the argument that Wright Pat is mostly an LE heavy base. You can make that argument, law enforcement heavy base. But the mentality was back when I joined was you work the gates to get the people skills you need to interact with individuals when you're on the patrol. And they're not getting that interaction. They're not getting put on those gates.
Are they doing it? Sounds like they're doing it more like the civilian police do it now.
Kinda. I can't say one way or the other. We do work with Department of Air Force civilians. At least I did, and that right towards the end. So we always had contractors, or at first it was contractors, and became civilians. But it just seemed odd to place these people in these positions when they have no way of knowing how.
No previous experience to help them with it.
Exactly. They need more training, and that's my biggest problem right now. You see a lot of incidents are just lack of training, and it shows.
Okay. Well, the hope of this video in these interviews is basically that future generations will watch it and maybe learn something or see that they're not alone in their experiences. Is there any kind of message you'd like to leave for those kids that are coming up?
No one cares more about your career than yourself. Don't ever let someone, don't ever place your career in the hands of somebody else. You need to be in control of your own destiny in order to succeed. If you don't, it's going to be awful. So no matter what, don't ever assume someone has your back. No one has your back. Just make that assumption now. By the time I left, the Air Force was equivalent to Game of Thrones. The amount of backstabbing was being involved. It was awful. Just awful how many people were getting booted for meaningless crap, or people who should have been booted being promoted. So if you want to join the military, at least the Air Force right now, watch your back and make sure you don't put it in the hands of anybody else.
Is there anything you feel we haven't talked about or that you'd like to talk about for the video?
No.
Well, once again, I want to thank you for doing this interview, and we're done.